Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
all in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. The Eye Test with Pierre, McGuire, and Jimmy Murphy.
The Stanley Cup winning Colorado Avalanche And after 22 years, Raymond Mark!
The sickest NHL podcast. It's gonna be sick.
And welcome to another edition of the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network. Jimmy Murphy here with Pierre McGuire. And where I am right now, but where you usually reside, Pierre, it is Beanpot Monday, the first Monday of the Beanpot, a huge day in Boston sports here and across the college hockey world. BU, BC, and before that, they will have Northeastern, Harvard. You've been to a few of these, Pierre, over the years. You know what it means to this city.
Well, it's gigantic. It's not just for the city. It's for the players that are playing, the families that are supporting the players, the students that sit in all different corners of the arena, the bands for all four teams. It's a magical moment for hockey, Jimmy. It really is. I've never experienced a bad Beanpot. Now, I never went there cheering for anybody either.
I was just going to say.
And also, I've seen heartbreak and I've seen enthusiasm and unbelievable energy. One of my real favorite times, believe it or not, was watching Jordan Harris score for Northeastern not too long before he turned professional with the Montreal Canadiens. It was just a magical moment, I thought, in Northeastern hockey history, and they're so valiant when it comes to the Beanpot, but also just the way Jordan had fun doing it. It was fun. It was just fun to watch Jordan score in that game. But all our guests, I've seen them all play in the Beanpot. Yep. I saw Scott Fusco playing the Beanpot. I saw Greg Brown and Doug Brown, which is going to be Doug today, playing the Beanpot. Johnny Cullen, saw him playing the Beanpot. And Jay Heinbuck, saw him playing the Beanpot. So, it's a star-powered Monday for Beanpot aficionados.
For sure. And, of course, those are our guests, just as you mentioned, John Cullen, formerly of BU, Scott Fusco, Harvard, Doug Brown, BC, and Jay Heinbuck, Northeastern. And we will talk to them shortly. Pierre, you look at let's get to the current edition, though, of this Beanpot right now. And I mean, you talk about star-studded and, NHL caliber talent. This has to be, I don't have the numbers for the most drafted players in one Beanpot in front of me. I apologize. I didn't get that done before this, but it's got to be up there, Pierre. I mean, these teams are just stacked with some prospects, especially in that BCBU game.
They are, and our next guest was actually never drafted in a regular draft by an NHL team, Johnny Cullen. Yet he was Rookie of the Year in the ECAC back then. It wasn't even Hockey East. He's the all-time leading scorer at Boston University. The team that drafted him in the supplemental draft, the Buffalo Sabres, they didn't even sign Johnny. Johnny had to go play in Flint in the old IHL, and then obviously somebody got really smart in Pittsburgh and signed him, and the rest is history for John, who played almost 700 regular season games in the NHL. He was a spectacular offensive dynamo. But as far as this Beanpot edition, I can't believe BC and BU are playing again. We just had them playing back-to-back. Wow. It was unbelievable. The star power for both teams is amazing. Most of these guys that have been drafted will play in the NHL. Some are going to play in a hurry and make a big impact. So it's going to be fun to watch. I can't wait to watch both games tonight. And
the other thing that's great about it too, on the flip side, is you got players that aren't drafted. You mentioned like a Johnny Cullen, who are maybe having great college careers, but just for whatever reason, the right eyes to take the eye test have not been put in front of them. Well, everyone's going to be there today. There's scouts. There's GMs at this game. Tons of people around the NHL world will be in TD Garden tonight. Or now that it's on TSN in Canada, it's on nationally as well on ESPN Plus, be watching all around the world, in North America and all around the world. So it's also a chance to put these kids, to showcase them and what they have to do. And maybe, it's just a matter of they slipped under the radar. Well, now they have a chance to shine in the spotlight.
They definitely do. One of the great things is when Johnny Cullen was playing in the Beanpot, they were actually playing in the old Boston Garden. And when you think about it, and Johnny will talk about it because he's played a lot of big games in that building too. That was a different animal. And I want to kind of get to know what John thought about playing in the old Garden versus the new Garden. And I think he'll have some pretty good stories for us.
Well, let's bring him on right now to talk about this. Is former NHLer and former BU star Johnny Cullen joining us here on the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network. How you doing, John?
Hey, guys, I'm doing good.
Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
He's never looked better. Johnny, you've never looked better.
Good too. It's been a long time, buddy.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Nice, Johnny. Where are you based now, John?
Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay, good.
When I retired from the Lightning back in 2000. My brother owns a car dealership down here, and I grew up in the car business, so I've been with him ever since.
Oh, nice.
So Murph, I'm just going to let you know something. John knows when the Cullens and the McGuires get together, some car aficionado things, they play golf and they have some fun together. John and I just did the hockey stuff. Now he's in the car stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff. And you might have a hockey team there again soon too, John. That's, that's kind of the chatter around the league. We'll see. But let's get to some hockey that's happening in Boston right now, John. And as Pierre was just saying before you came on, you got to play the Beanpot in the old Boston Garden. So talk to us about what it was like playing in the friendly or maybe not so friendly at times for skaters, old Boston Garden.
Well, yeah, Pierre alluded to it. The Boston Garden, it was, for the Beanpot, it was nuts. It was crazy. As you know, the old stadiums like Chicago or the Maple Leaf Gardens, Montreal Forum, they're on top of you. And it was loud, and all the bands are there from every school. Very exciting. I know it's got to be a little different atmosphere in the big rinks now, but in the old Boston Garden, it was fabulous.
John, you played for the great Jack Parker. You were a revelation coming out of Ontario. Your offensive skills were obviously overwhelming. You're Rookie of the Year in the ECAC, your first year. What was it like to play for a guy that won it as a player, won it as an assistant coach, and won it as a head coach in Jack Parker?
Coach was great. He was there for 40 some years. I know he's gonna be mad at me for forgetting this number now, but he was a player's coach, a demanding coach, though. He got the best of all of us, and and also he cared about us. He's a great friend to this day.
Yeah, and one thing I liked about Coach Parker too, he took it upon himself so much to just spread the game and the love of the game and promote the game around Boston. I mean, you couldn't go anywhere and not hear about him or BU hockey. So it must have been great just to see, I won't say pioneer, but an ambassador, so to speak, of the game that he was.
Oh, absolutely. For him being there that long, and then he played at BU, obviously. So
right.
He was there forever. And he was definitely an ambassador of the game in Boston. Being there that long, it's an amazing career he had there.
Take us inside one of the big rivals John Cullen had to go through in your Beanpot time.
Well, Pierre, as you said, growing up in Canada, outside Toronto, I had no clue about the Beanpot, no clue. And obviously it was big for players in that area. The guys from Boston, just to play in the Garden, it was a huge. It's like me growing up trying to play in Maple Leaf Gardens, it'd be a
Which
dream.
you did, by the way, Jimmy.
Which I did, yeah.
Which you did.
Which I did. It was pretty cool. And so I didn't know anything about it until obviously the first game back in 83. Yeah. And then I was lucky enough to play in all 4 finals because you never want to play in a consolation game. Only reason being. And so we lost our first 2, won our last 2. But when you walk in the rink in the consolation game and you're like, because you're getting ready for the big game, the finals, it's like nothing's really going on. It's quiet a little bit.
Yep.
And then when you're in the room, you can hear it outside. You can hear people coming in because at Boston Garden, you can hear everything. And you can hear people all of a sudden start getting louder, and you just got so pumped up. That final game I was lucky enough to play all 4 finals.
Yeah, that was great. And like you said, you lost the first 2, but then you beat BC, then you beat Northeastern in your final one. Just for our listeners out there, now I know all these schools have a bit of a rivalry, but if you can just explain to them, we've spoken about it a couple times, but just touch on the BC BU rivalry, maybe even draw a comparison to an NHL rivalry if you think that would help.
No, the BC BU was massive even back then. And they had a great team back then. We had a great team too, but they had Leachy, they had Janney, they had Kevin Stevens. Both the Brown brothers. It was every time we played them, it was exciting but we had a great team too. And the rivalry was just huge and very exciting.
Hey, Jimmy, I can just say this. John would taunt Kevin Stevens when they played on the option line together. It was Cullen, Stevens, and Recchi as a line, if you can imagine, in the NHL. And all those guys are pretty talkative, but nobody could talk like Johnny. Johnny was the best.
I don't know, Pierre. I'm not sure I could beat Artie or Rex. I'm not sure. Yeah.
They were good. Actually, I saw guys today, Charlie McAvoy after practice had a BC hat on because he lost a bet to John McClain, the BC coach. That's the assistant coach now. Yeah, he lost a bet from the games last week. So he said, I got to honor the bet. So he had the BC hat on.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that still goes on around the league, I'm sure, in offices, in bars, everywhere. They keep it going.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What, I mean, you win, I know it's probably hard to narrow down, but the 86 or the 87, which one meant more to you? Was it the 87 because it was your senior year?
Well, not really.
Okay.
As we go back to the BU-BC thing.
That's what I hoping you were going to go there.
Yeah. And again, BC was stacked. I think 30-some years ago, 4-1, 5-4-2.
I can pick that score up for you now.
I remember the 87 game because I know we beat – and Northeastern was pretty successful back then in the Beanpot. They went to the finals a lot. They had a good team too. But I know we beat them in overtime in 87. Mike Kelfer, I think. Either him or Pierre Marshall. I think it was Mike Kelfer scored the big goal for us against Northeastern in OT. But the BC, again, there was nothing like BU-BC, and for us to just beat them was because the Beanpot was so huge. It was something. It was big back then.
You nailed the score.
Big, and it's even big now. I know they.
Yep.
I know they just played.
2 games
last weekend, and BU didn't do very well. But
you nailed the score. It was 4-1 when you beat BC in 86, and then you beat Northeastern 4-3 in overtime in 87.
Yeah.
So those are the game. Yep.
But I mean, the OT was very exciting. Winning OT because the crowd was going crazy. It was awesome.
Good stuff.
John, I can't thank you enough for doing this. You look fantastic. I know you've been battling through a lot of health stuff, but you look amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, Pierre, I appreciate it. I feel good, bud. Thank you. Good to see you.
Yeah, I'll stay in touch, Johnny. Really good talking to you. Thank you so much.
Good to have you on here. Appreciate it. Thanks,
Really
Johnny. Johnny Cullen joined us here on the eye test with Pierre McGuire and myself, Jimmy Murphy. Yes.
Jimmy, I just got to tell you something. He's a humble guy. He's about as intense a competitor as you'll ever meet. And not a very big man, tough as nails, Jimmy.
Yeah, that's what I heard from Rex.
I'm just telling you. And never took a backseat to anybody, never complained about anything. One summer or 2 summers, I think we worked together at different hockey camps, and he hadn't been drafted. And a lot of people were wondering, how could he not be drafted? Like, this guy was rookie of the year. He was putting up like 100 points in college hockey. Just people were worried about his size back then. And then you see him play. And I had the privilege of working with him in 2 cities, in Pittsburgh and Hartford, when he was a player and I was coaching. Just couldn't say enough good things about Johnny Cullen. I cannot.
Yeah. And, that was the only time I've met him, and I haven't met him in person, Pierre, but everything I hear, he's a hard worker. Like that was the definition, was hard work. That was a common thread I heard about Johnny Cullen.
He was a play. You know what? I'm going to say this now, and some people say, well, wait a second, Adam Oates is in the Hall of Fame. There wasn't a big difference between Adam Oates and the way he played and John Cullen and the way he played. They made everybody around them better. I'm just telling you. And I coached against one of them for a long time, Oates, and I coached with and against one of them in Cullen. And I'm telling you, pretty darn similar in terms of how they approach the game.
Let me ask you this, Pierre. So he had that experience playing in the old Garden from his days at BU. Would coaches kind of pick the brains of players that had experience playing in there when you're a visiting team coming in? Is that something you utilize for sure?
Absolutely. I remember when we played the Bruins in the 91 Eastern Conference Final, Bob Johnson talked to Joey Mullen, who played at Boston College, talked to Kevin Stevens. And I think he even talked to Paul Stanton, who played at Wisconsin, but played, I think, high school tournaments at the Boston Garden. And one of the things that Bob did, he brought a measuring tape out, and he had somebody, I think it was Barry Smith, stand at one blue line and Rick Keough stand at the other, the 2 assistant coaches. How far is that apart? And they gave some number. He says, same exact size as Pittsburgh, so don't worry about it, boys. We're going to generate just as much through the neutral zone here as we did in Pittsburgh. So Bob was always really smart to do these kinds of things, and it worked really well, obviously.
I think it was more the mental aspect that felt confining to you, right? When you were in the Garden, just because the fans were so on top of you.
Yeah, that and the corners were small.
Yeah.
Like it's in the offensive zone. It was a different way of manufacturing offense with those tight corners.
Now, Pierre, I got to ask you before we get our next guest, and we're going to be having him on shortly. We've got Scott Fusco, former Harvard player, join us. When was your first experience with the Beanpot? As a fan?
Oh my gosh, I'm going to say I got released by New Jersey in '84 as a player. I started coaching in '84, '85. So I'm going to say '85 was the first one I went to. Back then, they didn't have it on TV unless you were in Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even think Nesson was going then.
No, it's TV 38.
Yeah, it was TV 38. So I don't even think Nesson wasn't even going. So I'm going to say '85 was probably the first one that I had the privilege of attending. And I haven't missed too many. I'm going to miss the first night, obviously tonight, but I will be there next Monday. And I'm trying to talk you into coming, which Jimmy.
I'm coming. Count me in. I look forward to it. And Pierre, I want to just ask you. So go back to that first experience. You go in there probably not understanding, like people outside of Boston don't. It's got an allure to it. But what was that first experience like? Just sitting in the stands and seeing the back and forth between the schools.
Overwhelming. Look, you're talking to a kid that grew up in Montreal. I used to pay 50 cents with my brothers to stand in the standing room section of the old Forum. They had a trumpeter there by the name of Dutchy, and he would play all the time, and he was legendary. Oh, yeah. And so, I was so fortunate as a young kid to grow up in Montreal and experience all this great stuff in the Forum and all the winning. And then I went to the Beanpot, and I was like, this is really good. Like, this is amazing. Now, it's not the Stanley Cup. I've had the fortune of winning that thing twice and broadcasting a ton of them. But yeah, different, just really different. I thought it was awesome. And then not too late, much later in my career, so 88, 89, I coached in the old Boston Garden with St. Lawrence University working for Joe Marsh. And we ended up beating Cornell and then UVM to win the ECAC championship. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't believe what it was like. That's the first time I ever had a chance to stand at ice level and actually coach there. Oh, wow. And everybody really was on top of you. And then, you coach in the NHL, and it's a totally different animal when you're coaching in the NHL. In the old Boston Garden, it was different.
Well, I'll tell you, I got a good Beanpot story. I wasn't at the Beanpot, but it's somewhat connected. So 78, I don't know if you've ever heard about the Blizzard of 78.
Oh, 100%.
They had the first night at a Beanpot. They actually still went through with it despite warnings from the weathermen and, people saying, this might not be a good idea. So they go through with it, Pierre, right? My dad's there. So my dad's a BC alum. So he's there with a bunch of buddies. I'm like 4 years old. I'm not even 4 yet, about 3.5 at that point. I'm home with my mom. And I had been sick for a little. And suddenly, I guess my fever just rose really fast. And she got all worried. She calls. And then I started to go into a convulsion as a kid. Whoa. And they had to take me to the hospital. So she's going to the hospital in a blizzard trying to get a hold of my dad. And my dad goes, well, I got news from you. They're not letting us out of here. We can't go. The roads are all shut down. So he got stuck in the Boston Garden overnight at the 78 Beanpot. And I was in the hospital at the same time as my poor mom.
Oh, that's crazy. That's a great story.
A lot of people, they said there's thousands of people that got stuck in the Boston Garden in 1978. So
that's a good folklore story. That's kind of like the 05 World Junior. All the people came down from Manitoba. They couldn't leave. Yep. So they had to open up the indoor football stadium at University of North Dakota. And one of the things that happened, we shared it with Coach Barry, Brad Barry, who was on on-campus Friday. They drank all the beer in the town. The town was drunk dry by the people that were staying at the football stadium.
I'm sure that happened at the Garden that night in 78.
I bet it did. We better get to our next guest.
Well, let's get him. We got him. Scotty Fusco joining us right now, former Harvard player. Hey, Scott, how are you?
Good. How are you? Can you hear me all right?
We can hear you fine. I got Pierre here. He's down in South Carolina. I'm back up here in Boston like you. Exciting time. You heading over in a bit?
I am.
Nice.
Hop in the car and head in.
Nice. Well, we're talking and trying to get it to our viewers that aren't from around the Boston area or haven't experienced a Beanpot, what it's like. So I guess, Scott, if you could say in a few words that come to your mind right away, just quick descriptions of what the Beanpot is.
The way I look at it is it's community. It's the Boston hockey community. You see people there. you might see it once a year. You might see it every week if you're in rinks. And it's a great time to catch up, sort of see what's going on with the current players, current schools. And you sort of have a couple of different factions, right? You have the students, you have people that are fans of a certain school, and they have the hockey community. And those are the people I like to see that, you run into. You might spend 5 years, but you catch up in 5 minutes.
Good
Jimmy,
stuff.
I have to tell you this. So Scott knows a lot about rinks. I don't think there's any human that does more for the women's game in particular than Scott Fusco. And Scott, you're to be commended on that. Everything you've done for women's hockey is amazing. And it's not just women. You do a lot for the men too. But the women's game is growing under your watchful eye. I have to ask you, how important, as you've seen it grown, is a women's Beanpot, especially after they played in TD Bank the other day?
Oh, it's obviously great visibility. Women's hockey's I'd say every 5 years takes a big leap as far as skill level and speed and ability of the players. So I'm currently coaching a U10 girls team, and I also coach a U19 girls team. So I'm seeing sort of the start and not the finish, but closer to the finish. And it's amazing to see the passion that they have, and just most of my U10 team was at the Beanpot at the Garden. They had a great time, and just seeing those players on that stage is inspiring for them, and I guess keeps them coming back to the rink.
Well, I think too, Pierre, we both agreed, and we both caught it watching on TV. We're seeing in, when the first game was over, some of the players after the first game came out into the stands and were signing autographs with the young girls. And that to us stood out like that's what it's about. And this is where it's going and how far it's come. So that had to be rewarding to you to see as well, Scott.
Absolutely. The women's teams are very good about doing events. A lot of the colleges do it as well. They'll do a skate with the team, or they'll do autograph events. And I think it's not that the younger girls actually know who these players are particularly, but it's just that they see them, and it gives them a path.
Yeah.
We're lucky, I run the East Coast Wizards program. We're sort of fortunate enough that we have a lot of players. We had, a dozen players playing in the Beanpot on the different schools. So our girls do like to go and look in the program and see where these girls are. Well, you know what? They're not that far ahead of me. 4 years ago they were playing here, and that's where I am. So it definitely gives them sort of hope and some inspiration.
Scott, I have to ask you played for one of the truly great hockey legends in Bill Cleary. He obviously didn't get a chance to play in the Beanpot like you and your brother Mark did. The only brothers, by the way, Jimmy, to ever win the Hobie Baker are the Fusco brothers. Both of them doing it at Harvard, playing for Bill Cleary. What was it like to play for Coach Cleary?
I can't say more good things about my experience playing at Harvard for Coach Cleary. He's just a sort of a special guy, great personality, obviously knowledgeable about the game. He gave us a lot of confidence. We had very few sort of rules. We had our systems, but honestly, they were pretty simple, and he trusted the players. And, I've taken a lot with me to my coaching. I'm always telling the players, like, trust your instincts. You're good players. You've been here before. You know what's going to happen, right? So figure it out. Go there. If you're wrong, you're wrong. Like, that's okay. We'll get it right the next time. And he just gave us a lot of sort of freedom to offensively. We had our little structure on the defensive end. You certainly have to take care of certain things there. But he let us play, and if things went well, that's great. If they didn't, we're right back out there. And he certainly gave me a great opportunity. I had a great career there, but right from the start, I got lots of ice time. I had good players to play with, and he gave me, that chance. And that's all any player really asks for is, to have that platform and have that opportunity. And then hopefully, you do well and you sort of build it from there.
Scott, did you go to the Beanpot growing up as a kid too? Were you able to go there with your dad or anything?
I did. I started going to the Beanpot when I was 10, maybe. And I heard you talking about the blizzard of 78.
Yeah.
I did not make it to the Beanpot in the blizzard of 78.
Good move.
I started to go. I grew up in Burlington, so I had maybe a 25-minute drive. We tried to figure out how to get in, through the snow, through Cambridge, down through Arlington into Cambridge, and get somewhere into near Harvard Square. and my parents decided to turn around. I think I was all for it to keep them going, but looking back, I think it was a good decision on their part.
Definitely.
That's why they were the parents.
Yeah, I was in Arlington, right by you.
We just had John Cullen on before you, Scott, and I know he was the unbelievably fierce competitor. You, I know, unbelievably fierce competitor. Is there one rivalry situation that you remember from your Beanpot days, whether it was against BU, BC, or Northeastern?
You know what? Honestly, my Beanpot experience, personally, I think I enjoyed it and I did well. As a team, we did not do that well.
Yeah.
I was in a lot of consolation games in the Beanpot. It seemed like every year we would come out of our exam break. Our first game would be the Beanpot, and we'd find ourselves down 2 or 3-0 before we sort of figured out what was what, and we had a hard time getting out of the first round. So it was enjoyable, but I can't really point to any great memories on that side.
Uh-oh. I hear you. Now, you look at Harvard, though. You mentioned those were some tough years, though. But I mean, they after that they started to come out and they got a few, right?
Yeah, I mean, we did well when I was there, and everything else but the Beanpot, and then they did pick it up, a little bit, after that, and lately they've won a couple.
Yeah,
it's kind of a funny tournament, right? The best team doesn't always win. BU had a big string there for a lot of years where they said here, no matter whether the team was good or average, they were going to win no matter what for some reason. And it is sometimes hard to break through there.
Yes. I mean, so just for everyone out there, for our viewers, so you know the statistics right now heading in, BU's got 31 championships. Boston College has 20. Harvard has 11 and Northeastern has 8. So at least you're not down the bottom there right now.
True, and I was at the first Northeastern one. I think Wayne Turner had a
Wayne Turner.
Yep.
Bull, and that was in the 70s, late 70s probably, that took them to get there first. So
yeah,
done pretty well since then too.
You have any great old Boston Garden memories, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, lots of Boston Garden memories. We played in the ECACs in Boston Garden.
Mm-hmm.
So we won it. We won a couple ECAC titles. We beat Providence in a great game for one of them. We had good battles with RPI when they won the national championship in '85. We lost that final, but that was a great game. One of the things I remembered most was the old Garden. At least the locker rooms we dressed in, you'd have to walk like through the crowd to get to them. So there'd be people waiting in line to go buy hot dogs and beer, and you're sort of pushing through them. It's true. You walk in the game, and there's your neighbor, sitting there having a beer and sort of say hello on the way out to the ice. And they certainly wouldn't do that anymore. But it was kind of a funny sort of entrance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I remember as a fan, it's a side story, nothing to do with the Beanpot, but funny. So I'm sitting there waiting to get a slice of pizza, and the Canadians are there trying to come in and get to the ice, right as Scott says, right by the concession stand. And for some reason, they're held up. I don't know if there's something going on with the Zamboni, but they were backed up. So they're just standing there in the middle of the fans in the corner. Lyle Odeline's to my left, and he looks at me and goes, "Hey, kid, how's that pizza?" He said, "It's great. It's Sicilian style. The guys from the North End." He goes, "All right, I'm going to have to grab one after the game." And then he just kept walking, and that was it. But that's how close you are to the players.
You're lucky Odie didn't steal your pizza. He might.
I know, right?
I
should have offered him one. Anyhow, good stuff. Well, we appreciate you joining us, Scott. We appreciate you taking the time. Get in there, have a safe trip in there, and enjoy the games tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thanks a lot, Scott. See you soon.
All right.
Thank you.
Former Harvard player Scott Fusco joining us. Man, what a job he's done up with his rinks up there.
Jimmy, it's in Bedford, Massachusetts, and I'm telling you right now, what the Fusco family has done to grow hockey in the entire state, but in particular for women's hockey, is unbelievable. And they never get enough acclaim. They never get enough credit. I skate there in the summers, and I try to give back the way they give back. They've been amazing mentors and role models to me, and I really appreciate everything that they do for the entire sport of hockey. And I'm telling you right now, the most, I would say, polite, generous people when it comes to helping grow the game, and they never, ever, ever tell anybody about it.
Yeah,
it really is amazing.
It's true. They're a great family, and he said that the Beanpot's about community. And as he said that, Pierre, I'm thinking, well, so are you. I mean, he is truly about,
He really is.
community.
So he has 3 daughters. All of them played college hockey. Bradley played at Harvard. Nell played at Bowdoin, and the youngest one, Mia, played at Trinity. They've all grown up in hockey. I had them all when they were young ladies in hockey camp. So I've known them since they've been 5 or 6 years old. But to see, and I love what Scott said, every 5 years, the game grows. Again, you see it. So, and he's not messing around. He just got back from Ottawa, Ontario. His U10 team was playing in a tournament there this weekend. They lost in the final 1-0. And his probably the biggest disappointment he had, because we were texting back and forth, they closed the canal. He was going to take his whole team skating on the canal, but they couldn't skate because it was too warm. So I know. So this is the kind of guy, like, he wants all these young ladies to experience all these different things that you can via hockey. And one of the great ones is iconic, is skating on the canal, the Rideau Canal in Ottawa.
Yeah.
It's not tracked for like a month, and he kept sending me notes, asking me about it, and obviously they couldn't do it. But of all the things, he brings his team to the final, these U10 young ladies, and then they don't get to skate on the canal.
Hey, then maybe another time. But no, I think it's great what he does. And all these guys, they still stay connected to the community, and that's what's great about it. Before we get Doug Brown on to talk a little Boston College, why don't we talk a little Boston College here? And as they referenced earlier that they did sweep BU there last week. And one of the guys that you've been totally promoting, rightfully so, and saying, watch out, he's coming, is Montreal Canadiens prospect Jacob Fowler. And one of the things you've said about him that impresses you is his composure. How important is it to have that in this atmosphere tonight?
So this will be his first taste of this. Mm-hmm. Now, he has won some big games on the road, especially going into BU last Saturday. Not this past Saturday, the Saturday before, going in there and winning. Not easy to do. That being said, this is a whole different thing. And so I don't think it will be a problem for him. Just like when Devin Levi played for Northeastern, it wasn't a problem for him playing in that kind. And I don't think it will be for Fowler. Plus, you got to remember, Fowler's had a taste of World Junior this year for a gold medal winning team. So I think he'll be okay. All that being said, if you give up a bad goal early, can you reel it back in? Because that environment is tough. It really is.
You got to move on. You got to just move on.
And I think this guy can do it. I do. I don't think he's that far away from being NHL ready. And I've told that to people within the Canadiens organization. But again, until you get there, nobody knows. Nobody knows.
Speaking of the Canadiens organization, I'm pretty sure one Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton will be at this game tonight. Knowing them
for lots of reasons. Jeff Gordon's son doesn't play at BU yet, but he's there. And obviously Lane Hudson and Luke Tuck, and one of Kent's sons is playing for Boston University as well. So lots of different reasons for the Canadiens to have a presence. But I'd say Jacob Fowler would be a pretty good reason for them to have a presence too.
For sure. And then, of course, I saw that Craig Conroy, GM of the Calgary Flames, is with his team. They're playing the Bruins tomorrow. So he'll be there as well, along with his staff. And from a lot of the scouts that you got to think we're going to be at the Bruins game tomorrow, probably come a day early to watch either some of their prospects or potential draft picks upcoming.
Well, Macklin Celebrini will be the big prospect that everybody will be watching, just because he's going to go for, unless something crazy happens, he's going first overall this summer. And I would say, and I've seen other people have said this, I've been telling you this for a while, Jimmy, he's Jonathan Taves, with I think maybe a little bit more of a motor. So I remember saying that about a player, and I say this out of respect. When I saw Austin Matthews for the first time, he reminded me of Ronnie Francis because of his ability to dominate the play and the puck, and also how to defend. And I remember telling Donnie Granato at USA Hockey at the time where he was coaching, this guy's Ron Francis, except he's got a better engine. And that wasn't a knock on Ronnie. It's just the reality. Austin just has got a real good engine. Yeah. And I would say, and this is not a knock on Johnny Taves, who's going to be in the Hall of Fame someday. Yeah. But I would say Celebrini might have a bit of a better engine than Taves had. Doesn't mean he's a better player, just a little bit better engine.
So you're a scout. Let's put you in the scouting shoes here right now. You're scouting. You're at a tournament like this. what are the 3 biggest things you're looking for from a player?
How they handle the pressure, how they manage the puck at both blue lines. And if you're a forward, can you release the puck quickly rather than overthink the play? And if you're a defenseman, can you make the first pass crisp and clean? So it depends on forwards and defense, the final intangible. But I'd say handling the pressure of the moment really matters. And that's why some people say, well, it doesn't always matter the program you go to. It sometimes does matter, actually, where you go.
Yeah.
Because it depends on the types of environments you get to play in.
Exactly.
You know,
Bingo.
I can just say, if you play at a school that continually goes to a Final Four in their league, scouts appreciate that, and that matters. If you play for a school that constantly goes to the NCAA tournament, that matters. If you play for a school that plays in the Beanpot every year, that matters. Yep. So all these events, they matter. And if you're a player, I'll use this as an example, that can play in the World Junior, that matters. It's a huge developmental tool. So all these things matter. And some kids get to experience it, and some, unfortunately, just don't. That's just the deal.
And, you know, too, I like to sometimes, and you've probably experienced this as a scout, too, when you see a kid that maybe isn't that hyped up here come into a situation like this, and boom, he arrives. I love moments like that. You know, and obviously they have to follow it up and continue it after that point. But that's another thing that these games here, this tournament presents to me is just environments for players that are maybe kind of flying under the radar to show up and get noticed.
That's a great point. I completely agree, Jimmy. You know, one of the big things, Mike Odessa, was a coach at RPI, very successful, obviously. And, you know, he had that great team with Adam Oates and Mike Dark and Mike Satapor and Darren Pupa and Mike Joplin. I mean, it was Johnny Carter. Johnny Carter. Like they had a phenomenal team. And one of the things that came out of, I think, their success was how Adam Oates was able to dominate games. We talked about Adam before, but I think one of the reasons why he ended up at RPI and he went there late was because people didn't appreciate how good he was. And then all of a sudden he goes to an environment where he's playing a lot of those big games and everybody's like, oh, this guy's really good. And eventually made a whack of money because of it. But I mean, it just shows you when you're presented opportunities, you got to take advantage of them.
Speaking of playing big games, our next guest, and we're waiting for him. He's just texted me now. He says he'll be here ASAP. He was just coaching a game. Is Doug Brown, formerly of BC, and of course, Stanley Cup champion twice with the Detroit Red Wings.
Detroit, 97 and 98. You know, again, I've known the family a long time. I'm a big fan. So he's the only person on this podcast today who played in the Beanpot. His brother played in the Beanpot. And he had 2 sons playing the Beanpot.
Wow.
He's the only one. And so one of his sons, Patrick, you know very well, is playing in the Boston Bruins organization now. And the other son, Christopher, is playing down in Jacksonville, Florida in the ECHL. And he's put up some startlingly large numbers playing down in Jacksonville. Christopher has. So I'm looking forward to talking to Greg about that, being the dad of 2 boys that played in the same event as him. Not everybody gets to say that they could do that.
So I don't remember Doug as well in his college days, Pierre, because I was younger then. But, you know, what was he like?
Oh, dog on a bone. Hard to play against. Great wheels. Really smart defensively. A guy that had
what he was with the Red Wings. I mean, that's how I remember.
Had to work hard for his opportunities. An amazing teammate. Fearless. So I remember watching him a ton. You know, I just started coaching, and I used to call these coaches and say, can I come watch your team practice? Because we would practice earlier in the day, and a lot of them would practice late. So I'd go watch Northeastern, I'd go watch BU, or I'd go watch BC. I'd even talk to Coach Cleary, and he would let me come watch Harvard practice. So I'd do all these different things, and I'd watch these players, and I just try to learn about it because I thought my playing career was going to last forever. It just didn't. But I wanted to be better at the next level, and that was coaching for me. And I just go watch, and every time I'd watch Doug, I'd be like, well, this guy's going to make it. And you know, a lot of people didn't think he would, but I was like, well, he's going to make it. He's going to make, and he obviously did.
So I just remember him from those Red Wings teams, Pierre, and he was one of those guys, like we've discussed this numerous times in the last few weeks as the trade deadline gets closer. he was one of those guys to me that was essential to have. Maybe you don't notice him as much in the regular season, but he's essential in the playoffs. Just like you talking about his workmanlike ethic there, but just clutch. All his instinct, he knew where to be. He sensed plays happening, and he broke up plays, and that's what I always loved. That he was one of the greatest role players I watched during my time as a fan watching the Red Wings. That's how I remember Doug Brown.
Well, I'm really glad you brought that up. If you were to have Igor Larionov on the show, if you had Slava Fetisov on the show, if you had Sergei Fedorov on the show, they would tell you the same thing. And I've talked to Igor about, Doug numerous times, and they would tell you the same thing. Like, he was such an appreciated teammate because he would do all that heavy lifting, which would allow those guys to go out and play offense. And at key times, I mean, nothing's more rewarding for a player than when your coach has you on the bench in the last 3 minutes of a game and you're going every other shift, especially when you're up by a goal. And in Doug's case, that happened a lot, especially when he was playing for Scotty Bowman. That happened a lot.
Well, after we're still waiting on Dougie here. After we get that, we've got Mr. Heinbuck coming on, the Northeastern great.
Yeah, Jay's coming on.
He seems pretty excited as well. And look, as they were saying, Northeastern had some bad luck. Harvard's had some bad luck there, but Northeastern always seems to be in the middle of it in the Beanpot. They may not always win, but they always seem to be in the middle of it, creating havoc. And we talked to Jimmy Madigan. He was great to have on. Jimmy's going to be there tonight, I'm sure.
He's there already. He's probably
there waiting,
pacing all over the place. Don't worry about Jimmy.
The mayor. But talk to me about Heinbuck. What was he like as a player?
Great offensive player, unbelievable player when it came to making the players around him better. Played the point on the power play a lot for the older, great Fernie Flaman. Jay actually went and played in Europe for the same team that I played on before I went to New Jersey. So, no, I've had a lot of time to get to know Jay over the years. He's done an outstanding job in his second hockey life, both as an assistant coach at St. Lawrence and then as a scout for the Pittsburgh Penguins and the New York Islanders. He's with the Penguins now. But Jay's done some amazing things in the scouting business too. But what I always thought about Jay as a player was he made the guys around him better. And that's not an easy thing to do. And again, not an overly large guy, but great wheels, really good ability to dissect the defense, and again, move the puck properly. And that's one of the reasons why I think he played the point on the power play. He's got a good story to tell you about his, I think, second Beanpot experience. Might have been his first.
Okay.
But I don't want to let it out of the bag yet.
All right, we'll let him tell it.
And if he doesn't tell it, I'm going to remind him.
Okay. Deal. Well, we're still trying to track down Doug Brown. I'll give him one last text here. He says Russian. I'll be there as soon as possible. So we'll hopefully get him on. Before we go, I want to just switch gears for a second, off topic, Pierre, because a lot did go down over the weekend at the All-Star weekend for the NHL. And obviously we addressed the Monahan trade of the day, but there's still a lot of chatter coming out of the All-Star when it comes to trades, when it comes to the Arizona Coyotes, tons of stuff. Pierre, what were some of the biggest storylines that struck you that came out of the All-Star weekend?
Honestly, the Olympics.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. I'm going to tell you the straight up truth. The NHL finding a way to figure out going to the Olympics. Jimmy, I'm just telling you, it's huge for the players that are in the league. You want to showcase players? You want to grow your TV brand? You put Nathan McKinnon in the Olympics. You put Connor McDavid in the Olympics. You make sure Timmy Stützle and Leon Draisaitl are going to the Olympics. Sidney Crosby, one last go at the Olympics. The man that scored the golden goal in 2010 in Vancouver, one of the largest moments in Canadian hockey history. I can go down the line. They made a mistake. They made a mistake in 2018, not letting the guys go. I'm just telling you, they did. They made a mistake after the COVID Olympics in Beijing. I kind of get it why the guys didn't go. I get that
was okay.
But in 2018, they made a mistake. They made a mistake. They can say whatever they want. I was there. They made a mistake. Move on. The biggest news coming out of that was the NHL is going to the Olympics, which I think is fantastic.
I'm with you too, and I'm so glad because there have been some talents wasted in USA, Canada, even Germany you mentioned there that haven't gotten a chance to be there as NHL players. So it's going to be great. All right, we do have our next guest, Doug Brown, formerly of BC And as I said, a 2-time Stanley Cup champion with the Detroit Red Wings, joining us here on the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network. We got him. I think they're just trying to bring him in because he's going to be audio.
He's not the first guest we've ever had that's audio.
No, it's fine. We don't mind. It's okay. He's having issues, I'm told, from the text people right now. The gremlins are at it today, Pierre.
No, it's the only one. And listen, if people knew how hard our crew is efforting to get this show up, I'm so proud of them. Yeah. Really proud. I'm going to tell the people.
I was just going to say, I don't see why we can't tell them.
Our people are sitting at an airport in Las Vegas, Nevada, getting ready to do the Super Bowl stuff. And they're actually doing this show sitting in a passenger lounge in Vegas at the airport. So thank you to them.
How dedicated they are.
Phenomenal. Yeah.
Yep. God bless them. All right. We do have Doug Brown now join us. Doug, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me, guys? What do we got?
Can hear you loud and clear. How'd the game go? You guys win? You there? Oh, we could
hear a barn burner. We were up and down, and the shots are when you coach high school girls, it's so much fun because you're coaching 3 different teams at the same time. There's the first line really knows what they're doing. Second line's a bunch of athletes playing hockey, and the third line, it's their first time playing, and it's a riot. So you got to be a creative coach out there when you're coaching high school girls.
So is Doug Brown Scotty Bowman, or is Doug Brown Lenny?
Did I lose you guys? You hear me or not?
No,
we got you loud and clear.
We got you. Go ahead, Pierre.
Hey, Doug.
Yes.
Try it again. McGuire. It's Pierre McGuire. We hear you loud and clear. So I got to ask you, are you Scotty Bowman style coach or a Lenny Siglarski style coach?
Yeah. What a loaded question. Yeah, no, I am. I am a protege of Scotty Bowman. I live and breathe by his philosophies and I feel that he gave me a PhD in hockey. No matter how good you thought you were before you had him, he brought the IQ up a whole nother level, explaining his vision of how the game should be played.
Well, Doug, let's go back to your Beanpot memories. Now, you did win one. You lost in a final. What do you remember about that 1983 win when Boston College won it?
Oh, well, a lot of concussions between then and now, so a little humor. Yeah. So okay. So that was against Northeastern. And that was pretty exciting because we were freshmen, and I was a freshman, and we were ranked 4th out of those 4 teams. We were the weakest in the tournament, and for a long time there, the weakest team was winning a lot of those Beanpots because that was our NCAA championship. We weren't going to win the NCAA, so we were all in on the Beanpot. Yeah, and that was pretty exciting. And I actually remember something about that one because show my ego. I had a goal 6 seconds in that for the longest time was the fastest goal in Beanpot. I think it was the start of the second period, and then since then I think somebody broke it, but I always got a kick out of it.
Hey, Doug, one of the coolest things about you coming on is you had 2 boys that actually played in the Beanpot, Patrick and Christopher. What was it like to be a dad, having already played in the Beanpot and won the Stanley Cup, watching your boys play in the Beanpot?
Yeah, that was special. So going back in the Boston Garden and getting the goosebumps, anytime you step into your hometown arena, NHL arena, and see the Beanpot, so special. I think Patrick's team won it all 4 years, so that was easy for him. And I think Christopher's team did pretty well also. They won at least one. And so that was always a lot of fun walking around the Garden, seeing your boys battle cross-town rivalries.
Doug, one of the common threads we've been talking about of what the Beanpot can do for a player is really help them learn how to play in pressure situations, help them learn how to have composure. How much did that help you, when you reflect back on it, when you became a pro, having an experience like the Beanpot?
Yeah, it's an interesting comment. You and yes, very much so. No, you think about that. When you choose to play for one of those 4 Boston teams, if you grew up in the neighborhood, that is, you look for that excitement, that thrill, that suspense. If you're a youngster and you see the emotion and the college kids and the college girls screaming, you're going, I want to be part of this. Put me in.
Yeah, it's great. I would just remember the one that we've said it millions of times too. We just love the fans all situated in different areas of the arena, going back and forth, and the band's playing. It's got to be great as a player on the ice too.
it's emotional, and you find out I don't know, you find out a little bit about yourself, because there's all of a sudden you're playing in front of 15,000 people instead of a local high school rink. And it's you don't even, when you go out on the ice in the Boston Garden, your feet don't even touch the ice. It's hard. It's hard to breathe. Like you're so nervous. Your heart is going 1,000 miles an hour. It is nerve-wracking in a good way. So call it, you learn to either go one way or the other with that type of suspense and nervousness and excitement, and you better embrace it, or else it'll run you over.
Hey, Doug, before you came on, we had Scott Fusco on, and he and Mark, as you know, the only brothers to ever win the Hobie Baker Award, both doing it when they played at Harvard. Your brother, Greg, has had a phenomenal playing career, and obviously now a coaching career, starting out as a head coach at your alma mater. What advice did you give Greg before this first Beanpot as a head coach for him?
Oh, no. I think we're way past that. What am I, 59 and he's 55? I think we're past the advice thing. When it comes to Gregory and I ask him, how ready are the boys? I didn't even have to say it about this, but at the start of the season, and try to give him some Scotty Bowman isms if he's trying to right the ship. But that's about all I get. I throw it from left field and just try to give him some philosophies to keep the ship straight.
Good stuff. Well, Doug, we appreciate you taking the time, and we also appreciate you doing so much for girls hockey and women's hockey as well. We're just talking Scotty Fusco and all he does as well, and just how far things have come. And that doesn't happen without people like you. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And it's the love of the game, just giving back, whether it's the boys or the girls. And hey, it puts a smile on my. Here I am going into a high school girls game, and I got goosebumps going in that locker room, getting ready and explain to them, it's game day, girls. Let's get it on. Let's go.
Hey, Doug, thank you so much for coming on. It means a ton to Jimmy and I. Really appreciate it.
Hey, I appreciate you guys. Thanks a lot.
Take care.
All right, that's former NHL and former Boston College Eagle and Beanpot champion Doug Brown joining us here on the eye test, and we're going to go right to our next guest. He played for Northeastern, and that's Jay Heinbuck joining us right now. Hey, Jay, how you doing?
I'm doing good, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Heine, what's that picture behind you? What's the picture behind you, Heine?
That is the '84 Beanpot Championship.
There you go.
Let me guess, Jay.
That's me scoring a goal on Cleon Daskalakis.
See, Jimmy, I knew that. See, I just knew Heine would have something to glorify his phenomenal career. And obviously, Cleon played at BU and Jay played at Northeastern. And sometimes there's some trash talking that goes on.
Oh,
there.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, and my shot was that you can actually see the puck there. It's actually being dropped to me. That's not me delivering the shot. It was harder than that.
Nice. What did that? So just take us back to that, because you guys won back-to-backs. Your first year you lost in the final, then you win back-to-back, and then you didn't. The last one was just consolation. But what was that like, winning back-to-back titles for Northeastern and for you?
Well, the celebration, once you get into the celebration, was phenomenal. Like till all hours of the night at Punter's Pub, which is the famous place on campus at that time, and so that was really cool. But I'll tell you, the two Beanpots were different in one kind of real special way. The very first one in '84 was very emotional, and I don't know if you've touched on it or know the history. Fernie Flaman, our coach at the time, his son Terry was gravely ill with a terminal illness, and that he was getting really bad leading up to the Beanpot. And there were times in the weeks before the Beanpot that Fernie would come on the ice and start to put us through some drills, and he would just emotionally break down and have to leave the ice. So it was a real emotional time. Anyway, we won the Beanpot that night, and just like, you parade the Stanley Cup around, we paraded the Beanpot right down into that corner where Terry was in his wheelchair at that time, and we were up against the glass, and he was waving and giving us the thumbs up, and he came in the locker room after and said some nice things, how it meant a lot to him to see his dad's team win another Beanpot, and then Ken Manchurik, one of our captains, set the Beanpot in his lap, and it was a really emotional time. And then he let us have our moment after that, and we started celebrating, and it was just a great time. The next year was, back to back. Like Northeastern, we were the underdogs most years, and to win it back to back was quite phenomenal. So
Jay brings up that great name, Kenny the Hawk Manchurik. He's a great Northeastern player, signed with the New Jersey Devils. Never really made it there, but he was a great offensive player. Jay, you brought up Coach Flaman. I got to know him so well, much like you. How did he influence Jay Heinbuck as a person and as a player?
Well, Fernie was he was old school. Like I never missed a game my career at Northeastern because Fernie was old school, and he wanted his players to be tough and play through injuries and things like that. And back then, if you recall, there was junior varsity teams, right? So it was like the minor league team right below you. And I can still remember a couple times being on the trainer's table and Fernie saying, "Are you going to be able to go tonight?" And I'd say, "Well, gee, I got this bad hip pointer." And he'd say, "Well, there's someone from the JV team can come up and take your place." So I went out and played, never missed a game in 4 years. But, but it's funny, the transition. Like I think Fernie tried to send that message that, hey, I'm in charge here. And by my senior year, I was one of the captains, and he knew we both had, with the name Heinbuck and Flam, and we both had German heritage. And he took me down to a nice old restaurant in Boston where they served really good German food. And so there was kind of almost like a little switch where, okay, now I'm molding you into a person, and now I'm going to become your friend. And he was. I know in the scouting business I've been in for my whole life here now, and you'd run into Fernie, and it was just always so great to see him. He's a special man.
Great stuff.
Agreed.
One of the common threads we've been asking people too is just how much it prepares players, the Beanpot that is, to play in pressure environments, and how much composure you can gain as a player, even as a human, I guess, from being in that experience. What did you take from that element of the games?
Well, it sure was, because like for us, we knew going into our seasons that we weren't going to be going to the Frozen Four, and now they called it the Final Four back then, but the Frozen Four. And so the Beanpot was our championship, and we wanted to win that. 14,000 people cheering and screaming, and there was a lot of hype. And I actually I have to touch on something. I was listening while Doug Brown was just on, and what great timing by you guys. And he has had a few concussions, because he mentioned the goal 6 seconds in his freshman year. It was actually in 1985, because I was the guy that coughed up the puck to him on that goal. I was mentioning this to Pierre last week when we talked about it. We had a 2-1 lead, and this was the semifinal game, the first Monday, in 1985. We had a 2-1 lead, starting the third period on a power play. So as we did back then, I played the left point quite often. So our center wins the faceoff directly back to me. I give a little shoulder fake and try to saucer it over to Jimmy Averill. Doug Brown knocks it out of midair, goes in and scores high glove on Bruce Racine 6 seconds in. So you talk about trying to crawl into a hole somewhere. Well, thank God 4,000 people were still in getting beers at the concession stand. But thank goodness that Watertown's Joe McGinnis was a line mate of mine in that game, and he scored the go-ahead goal against Scott Gordon a few minutes later. So we ended up winning that game. So thank goodness, or I might have some problems with myself right now after that.
See, Jimmy, I told you he would bring that goal up, and he did. And good on you, Jay, for doing that. That's awesome.
Good stuff. So, Jay, for our viewers out there, what are you doing these days?
Well, my 18th year with Pittsburgh Penguins as a scout. And it's funny you asked me that, because I was thinking just the other day, what the Beanpot means to different people. And for me, it was real, like that. I could look at it as a door opener. I came down on my recruiting trip to the Beanpot. Don McKinney brought me down, sat myself and a couple other recruits right at center ice, first row of the balcony. I grew up with Bobby Orr. He was my favorite player, still is my favorite player of all time. And so Fernie brought us down into the Bruins locker room, showed us around. Somehow Milt Schmidt happened to be around, so I met Milt Schmidt. And so the next day I committed to Northeastern, before even getting on the airplane and thinking about it. So, but it's been kind of a door opener, because I've been in hockey all my life. Through the Beanpot, I went to Northeastern. I met a few a lot of people along the way, but Pierre and I have a good friend in Ray Shiro, who's been a big influence in my life. And through Ray, I met Pierre, and Ray and Pierre ended up helping me get the job at St. Lawrence University way back in 1982 as an assistant coach. So I was there 10 years and 4 years with the Islanders, and now 18th year with Pittsburgh. So
That's great.
The Beanpot's been a door opener, and that's, kind of hockey's been my life. It's been a great ride.
Hey, Jay, I got to ask you, because I grew up playing against them. It's no secret. Jimmy Madigan and I have been friends a real long time.
Yep.
What's your favorite Jimmy Madigan story?
It's tough to narrow down.
Oh, yeah, I don't.
Lay it out there, Heine.
Well, I don't want to. I'll do a throw under the bus story, because Jim's not a big drinker or anything like that. But sometimes the last day of class for any person in university is a celebratory time. And I can still remember seeing poor Jim Madigan walking after his last day of class. They went golfing, and he came back staggering with his golf clubs on his hands and everything. And that's totally out of character, Jim Madigan, because he's such a professional guy. So that was really funny. But also, Jim and I worked together when we first went to Pittsburgh, and Ray Shiro hired us. And Jim was a part-time scout in the New England area, and I was a full-time scout. And to this day, Jim will talk about it once in a while. He said, we're going to win a Stanley Cup with this team. And sure enough, 3 seasons later, 2009, we beat Detroit and won a Stanley Cup. And I can still remember Jim hugging me at Joe Louis Arena after we won and said, I told you we were going to win a Stanley Cup with this team. So that was good thrill.
Jimmy, Jay's won 3.
Yeah.
Wow.
3 Stanley Cups.
Love it. Good stuff. Well, we appreciate you taking the time, Jay. I hope Northeastern does well for you. They're coming right on right now, so we'll let you go so you can go watch that. Them in Harvard, and then, of course, BCBU in the second game. Best of luck to you. I'll see you around the rinks, eh?
Okay, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Travel safely, Jay. Thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate
it. Yeah, thank you.
Jay,
take care, guys.
Join us here on the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network in our Beanpot edition. And as I just said, the Beanpot is about to get underway here, Pierre, in Boston. You going to make a pick on a winner?
Yeah, I'm going to really be going off the edge here. I'm going to take BC.
Okay. I'm going the other way, and my dad would kill me, but I'm going BU because I got a feeling that last week left a real bad taste in their mouth, and they're out for some redemption this weekend. And what better way to get it than to beat them in the
listen, I get it. I totally follow.
But there's definitely more skill on BC. I'll give you that.
Again, we talked about Jacob Fowler before.
Yep.
I think Fowler is the X factor. If he plays to the level that I think he can, that's a huge advantage over all the other teams. And again, they're all good. All these teams are good, but I don't know if anybody's better in goal than Jacob Fowler. Now he may, have a tough night tonight. Who knows? But I still think he's the best goalie there.
We'll see. All right. Well, I appreciate you lining up all these wonderful guests here. And again, big thanks to our production crew there in Vegas for all they're doing today. And I hope they have a great time on Super Bowl Radio Row this week. I heard it's like thousands and thousands of people in Radio Row, I guess. Like, wow. It's its own little city, I guess.
Jay, what these men have done for us today to get this show on the internet is phenomenal.
Yep.
I'm so grateful for everybody over at the Sick Podcast and what they were able to do. Mind shattering. When we were just before we came on, I was like, where are they? We're at the airport in Vegas. I'm like, what? I was like, oh my goodness. Thank you, man. Thank you so much. It really makes a big difference, and we appreciate it.
Thanks to all our guests as well, and thanks to you, the viewers. And we'll be back tomorrow for another edition of the Eye Test here on the Sick Podcast Network.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Eye Test with Pierre McGuire and Jimmy Murphy on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.